The silence in our house had become a third occupant, one that settled into the upholstery and echoed in the hollow spaces between my wife, Sarah, and me. It wasn't a hostile silence, not anymore. Those loud, sharp silences of the early arguments had long since faded into this, a weary, accepted quiet, the kind that follows a storm that has blown itself out, leaving only wreckage in its wake. The central piece of that wreckage was my relationship with my 16-year-old stepson, Kyle. I'd come into Kyle's life when he was 7, a shy boy with his mother's wide, hazel eyes and a father who had exited stage left, leaving a void I had naively believed I could fill. The first few years were good, even great. We built Lego castles, I coached his peewee soccer team, and he'd call me, Dad, sometimes, the sound of it a warm, proud glow in my chest. But adolescence had hit Kyle like a freight train. The sweet boy receded, replaced by a sullen, withdrawn teenager who wore his hoodie like a suit of armor and viewed me not as a father, but as an obstacle, a jailer, an unwelcome guest in the home he shared with his mother. The current Cold War had been triggered, like so many others, by something trivial, his grades. They'd been slipping from B's to C's and now teetered on the edge of D's. I'd tried to talk to him, to offer help, to lay down rules about phone use and homework time. My attempts were met with a wall of monosyllabic grunts and a look of such profound disdain that it could curdle milk. He just needs space, Mark, Sarah would say, her voice tight with the strain of trying to be a bridge between two landmasses that were determined to drift apart. He's going through a lot. We're all going through a lot, Sarah, I'd retort, the frustration a bitter taste in my mouth. But he lives here. He can't just treat us like we're the enemy. The enemy. That's what I felt like. My attempts at discipline were overruled, my suggestions dismissed. Sarah's love for her son was a fierce, protective force, and while I admired it, it also felt like it was slowly pushing me out of the family picture. I found myself spending more time in the garage, a space that had become my sanctuary. It was where I kept my project, my pride and joy, and the one thing in my life that felt entirely and unquestionably mine, a 1969 Ford Mustang Mach 1. She was a beast of a machine, or she had been, once. I'd bought her as a rusted-out shell 5 years ago, a promise of future glory. Her engine was a complex puzzle of disassembled parts, her interior was a ghost of cracked vinyl, and her iconic deep blue paint was a memory under a coat of primer and surface rust. But to me, she was perfect. She was potential. Working on her was my therapy, the steady, predictable work of turning a wrench giving order to the chaotic emotions inside the house. The garage smelled of gasoline, grease, and hope, a stark contrast to the scent of disappointment and simmering tension that filled our home. Kyle had no interest in the car. In fact, he seemed to actively resent it. He'd never said so, but I saw the way he'd glance at it when he passed the open garage door, a flicker of something, annoyance. Contempt, before his face would settle back into its default blankness. I figured he saw it as a symbol, a thing that took my time and attention away from him, even though he'd made it abundantly clear he wanted neither. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. I'd received an email from his physics teacher. Kyle had skipped a major lab, and his grade had plummeted. That evening, I confronted him at the dinner table. Kyle, we got an email from Mr. Henderson today. You skipped the kinematics lab. Care to explain? He didn't look up from his plate, pushing a piece of broccoli around with his fork. No, you don't care to explain, or, no, you don't have an explanation. I asked, my voice hardening. Mark, maybe after dinner, Sarah interjected softly. No, Sarah, this is important. Kyle, look at me. This is your future we're talking about. You can't just skip classes because you don't feel like going. That's when he looked up. His eyes, so like his mother's, were cold and flat. What do you care? You're not my dad. The words, though I'd heard variations of them before, landed with the force of a physical blow. The air went out of the room. Sarah gasped, Kyle, but the damage was done. I saw the briefest flash of regret in his eyes, but it was swallowed instantly by defiant anger. He shoved his chair back, the legs screeching against the hardwood floor. I'm done, he muttered, and stalked off to his room, leaving a silence more profound and painful than any that had come before. That was the last time we'd spoken more than 2 words to each other. For 2 weeks, we moved around the house like ghosts, careful to never occupy the same space for too long. The distance between us felt like a chasm that was too wide and too deep to ever cross. I threw myself into work in the Mustang, the metallic clang of tools a satisfying substitute for the conversation we couldn't have. I was heartbroken, yes, but more than that, I was resigned. This was my life now. This was my family. Then, it happened. It was a Friday, and I was returning home from a business trip, a 2-day conference that had felt more like a reprieve than a burden. I was tired, my shoulders aching from a cheap hotel bed and the mental fatigue of having to be on for clients. All I wanted was a hot shower, a decent meal, and to lose myself for an hour in the garage, checking on the Mustang. I pulled into the driveway, the familiar sight of our 2-story colonial house doing little to ease the knot in my stomach. As I got out of the car, I noticed something odd. The garage door was closed, which wasn't unusual, but the small, high window was dark. I usually left the garage light on when I was away, a silly habit against burglars, Sarah always said. I lugged my suitcase to the front door and stepped inside. "Honey, I'm home," I called out, the customary phrase feeling hollow. Sarah appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. She offered a small, tight smile. "Hey, you, how was the trip?" "Long," I sighed, dropping my bag by the stairs. Traffic was a nightmare coming out of the city. I gave her a quick kiss. "Where's Kyle?" "In his room, I think. Studying." The way she said it told me she didn't believe it any more than I did. I nodded, the familiar weight of our situation settling back onto my shoulders. "I'm just gonna go check on the car for a minute. Clear my head." A strange, almost imperceptible flicker of something passed over Sarah's face. "Nerves. Oh, maybe you should just relax for a bit first. You just got home." Her reaction was odd. She was never that interested in my garage time. If anything, she usually encouraged it as a way to diffuse my stress. "I won't be long," I said, already turning toward the door that led from the laundry room into the garage. "I just want to make sure everything's okay." "Mark, wait," she started, but I was already pushing the door open and reaching for the light switch. The fluorescent bars flickered to life, buzzing softly, and then illuminated the space. I froze. My brain simply stopped processing what my eyes were seeing. It wasn't just disbelief, it was a complete system failure of comprehension. The garage looked different. Cleaner. No, not just cleaner. Transformed. The usual clutter of tools, oil cans, and random car parts was gone. The workbenches, usually buried under a layer of grime and disarray, were tidy, the tools hung neatly on their pegboards. The concrete floor, normally stained with decades of drips and spills, was clean, almost shining. But my eyes weren't drawn to the clean floor or the tidy benches. They were locked on the center of the garage, on the reason for all of it. My Mustang. It was no longer a patchwork of primer and rust. It was covered. A giant, blue, silky car cover was draped over it, a cover I had never seen before. It was fitted perfectly, hugging the muscular contours of the hood and the fastback rear end. Tied neatly at the front and back, it looked like a wrapped present. A massive, automotive-shaped present. What is this?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. Sarah was standing behind me in the doorway, her hand over her mouth. Her eyes were wide, glistening with tears, but she was smiling. A real, genuine, breathtaking smile. I don't understand," I stammered, taking a hesitant step forward. Did you hire someone? A detailing service?" She shook her head, the smile growing wider. "No, Mark, it wasn't me." My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation. A friend, a neighbor, it made no sense. Then my eyes fell on the workbench again. Leaning against the leg of the bench was a small, flat cardboard box. I walked over, my legs feeling like wood, and picked it up. Written on the top in black marker, in a handwriting I recognized from school permission slips, were 2 words, "For Dad." My breath hitched. "Dad." With trembling fingers, I lifted the lid off the box. Inside, nestled on a bed of crumpled tissue paper, was a bound booklet. It wasn't professionally printed, it was made from printer paper, stapled together along the spine. On the cover was a printed, slightly pixelated photo of a 1969 Mustang Mach 1, in that exact same deep blue color. Underneath, in a large font, it read, "Project Mach 1, the restoration log." Confusion warred with a dawning, impossible hope. I opened the booklet. The first page was a table of contents, neatly organized. Phase 1. Engine bay detailing. Phase 2. Interior deep clean. Phase 3. Bodywork inspection and touch-up. Phase 4. Final detailing and protection. I flipped to the first section. It was a log, written in that same handwriting. October 14th. Spent 3 hours degreasing engine block. Used citrus-based cleaner and wire brushes. Noted a small crack in the heater hose, need to remember to tell Dad. Took photos before and after. I stared at the words. Tell Dad. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I looked up at Sarah, who was now openly crying, tears streaming down her face. She just nodded, gesturing for me to keep going. I turned the page. There were printed, color photos glued neatly into the log. A before picture of my grimy, oil-caked engine bay, and an after picture showing it clean, the metal parts shining, the hoses black and new-looking. It was a night and day difference. Page after page, the log documented a secret, meticulous project. October 21st. Removed all seats and carpets. Vacuumed and shampooed. The vinyl on the driver's seat is badly cracked. Found a replacement online for $175, but waiting for approval. Cleaned all interior glass. November 5th. Started on bodywork. Clay barred the entire body to remove contaminants. Treated surface rust spots with converter and primer. Took me 4 days after school. I kept flipping, my disbelief growing with every entry. The dates went back over 2 months. The entire time I'd thought he was locked in his room, ignoring the world, he'd been out here. In my garage, working on my car. The final entry was from 2 days ago. December 5th. Final detail. Washed and hand-waxed the entire body. Applied protectant to all rubber and vinyl trim. Fitted the new car cover, used my lawn mowing money. Project complete. Hope he likes it. The final page of the booklet wasn't a log. It was a letter. Dad, I know things have been bad between us. I know I've been a jerk. I'm sorry. I've been angry for a long time, but not at you. Not really. I've been angry at my real dad for leaving, and I took it out on you because you were the one who stayed. It's stupid, I know. I remember how much you loved this car. I remember you telling me about the plans you had for it when you first bought it. I guess I wanted to do something for you. Something that would show you that I do see you. I do listen. And I am grateful. You are my dad. You're the one who's been here. I watched all the YouTube videos I could find. I used my own money for the supplies. Mom helped a little with ordering some stuff, but she promised not to tell. I hope this is okay. I hope I didn't mess anything up. Love, Kyle. I stood there, in the middle of the immaculate garage, holding the booklet, the words swimming in front of my eyes. The silence was no longer empty. It was filled with the echo of hundreds of hours of secret, loving labor. It was filled with the scent of wax and polish, of effort and apology. It was filled with a meaning so profound it felt like the air itself had changed. I looked from the letter to the car, shrouded in its blue cover, a monument to a love I had been convinced was gone forever. The shock was so complete, so total, that my knees felt weak. I had to lean against the workbench. He's been out here every day after school, Sarah said softly, coming to stand beside me. She put a hand on my arm. He'd wait until you were on your way home from work and then clean everything up, making sure it looked exactly as he found it. He was so determined to get it perfect for when you got back from your trip. I had no idea. I managed to choke out, my throat tight with an emotion so powerful it was almost painful. All those nights, I thought he was. I know, she whispered, squeezing my arm. He was so scared you'd be mad. Mad, the word was a croak. I looked at the car, at the clean floor, at the log in my hands, a testament of devotion more meaningful than any words. How could I ever be mad about this? Just then, a hesitant shuffling sound came from the doorway. Kyle was standing there, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, his shoulders hunched. He couldn't meet my eyes. He looked exactly like the scared, guilty boy I'd known at 7, not the angry teenager of the past few years. Did you open it? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. I didn't trust myself to speak. I just nodded, holding up the booklet. I'm sorry if I overstepped, he said quickly, his words tumbling out. I know the car is your thing. I wanted to help. And I read the log, and I know about the heater hose, I can show you where it is, and I didn't replace it because I wasn't sure which one to get, and I know the interior still needs a lot of work, but I did the best I could with the cleaning and I crossed the garage in 3 long strides and did the only thing I could do. I wrapped my arms around him and pulled him into a tight, crushing hug. He stiffened for a second, surprised, and then his own arms came up, tentatively at first, and then he was hugging me back, his face buried in my shoulder. I felt his body shudder with a silent sob, and I knew mine was doing the same. We stood there for a long time, in the middle of that clean, bright garage, holding on to each other, the silent chasm between us finally, miraculously, bridged. Kyle, I finally said, my voice thick with tears. I pulled back, holding him by the shoulders so I could look him in the eye. This is the most incredible thing anyone has ever done for me. Ever. I am not mad. I am shocked. I am proud. I don't even have the words. He looked up at me, and for the first time in years, I saw the boy I remembered looking back at me. The defensiveness was gone, replaced by a vulnerable, hopeful relief. You really like it? He asked, a hesitant smile touching his lips. Like it? I laughed, a wet, choked sound. Kyle, I love it. But more than the car, I love this. I tapped the booklet against his chest. I love what this means. Thank you. Later that evening, after a dinner where the silence was finally, joyfully broken by easy conversation and real laughter, the two of us went back out to the garage. Together, we untied the cords and carefully pulled the silky cover off the Mustang. The sight took my breath away. The deep blue paint, which I'd only ever seen in my imagination and in faded photographs, gleamed under the fluorescent lights. The chrome bumpers and trim sparkled. The glass was crystal clear. The interior, though still worn, smelled fresh and clean. It wasn't a fully restored show car, not by a long shot. But it was a car that had been cared for, loved, and meticulously detailed by a boy who was trying to find a way to say he was sorry, and that he loved his dad. I ran my hand over the smooth, cool surface of the fender. It's beautiful, son, he beamed, a real, full, unguarded smile that lit up his whole face. I'm glad you think so. You know, I said, popping the hood to look at the spotless engine bay he'd documented so carefully. That heater hose does look pretty bad. And I was thinking, now that the easy stuff is done, maybe you could help me with the hard parts. The engine rebuild, the transmission. His eyes widened. Really? You'd let me help? Let you? I put my arm around his shoulders. Kyle, after this, you're my official chief restoration assistant. This is our project now. That is, if you want it to be. The look on his face was all the answer I needed. It was a look of pure, unadulterated joy. Yeah, he said, his voice firm and sure. I'd like that a lot. We stood there for a while longer, planning, talking about carburetors and camshafts, the language of the garage becoming our new common tongue. The shock of what he had done had begun to settle, but the awe remained. It wasn't about the car, not really. It was about the profound, shocking, and beautiful truth that sometimes, the people we think are the farthest away are actually working in the quiet, secret hours to find their way back to us. And sometimes, they build a bridge so strong and so stunning, you're left with no choice but to stand in awe, your heart full, forever changed by something your stepson did.